Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Me, You, and Who. Today, our Executive Director, Katy Encalade, takes us to the 2024 Society of Ethics for Egg Donation and Surrogacy Conference, or SEEDS Ethics Conference. SEEDS is a nonprofit group which started with the intent of defining ethical practices for egg donation and surrogacy program. Katy sits down with some of the most influential figures in surrogacy and egg donation. You'll hear from Adam Winder, owner of SeedTrust, Dr. De Pinho, founder of Reproductive Centers of America, Lisa Chiya, president and founder of Genesis Group, as well as the co-founder and managing partner of Modern Parent Mentor and Surrogacy Mentor, Lisa Stark Hughes, president and CEO of Gestational Surrogate Moms, and Sarah Paige, COO of Art Risk Financial and Insurance Solutions. Get ready for a fascinating look at how each of these leaders is helping shape the future of family building. Enjoy! Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all of the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day.
All right, we are back here in San Diego at the SEEDS conference, where I get the privilege of talking with Lisa Chiya, one of the founders of SEEDS. And the amazing organization that's been built here is because of your love for this industry as a whole and the intended parents and surrogates and egg donors that get to be a part of it. And so share with me a little bit about your passion behind and why SEEDS was started.
I think SEEDS was started because agencies didn't have a home. We were all solo islands, and we made up our own rules. It was like the wild, wild west. I mean, some agencies did rogue things, and some agencies are like, we need to do things by the books. We need to do what's right. Their moral compass was like, these are the things that need to happen. And when we saw rogue agencies, we were like, oh, that's them, this is us. And we really didn't have any communication. Then I got to know a few agencies and realized we have more common than we don't have in common.
Right.
And it was so empowering to meet with other agencies that had the same problems we had, and we could help create solutions. And so this was a conversation with Wendy Wilson Miller and Steve Masler, and we started meeting on a regular basis, and we found that, you know what, we need a space where all agencies can come and create standardized standards where we can say this is the gold standard. And if you're a new agency, you have somewhere to go to look to for advice, mentorship. And so that's how it kind of started. It started with an idea of wanting to do better for our intended parents and kind of giving them a place to say, okay, this is where the agencies are going to talk about doing what's right, and you want to work with these agencies, you know?
Right.
And so that's how it all started. It was just an idea of an idea, and slowly it just morphed into this organization because we felt like, okay, we need standards, we need to congregate, we need to convene, and felt like there needed to be a community because we didn't have that. You know, we talked about mental health professionals needing licenses and continuing education credits in order to maintain their status as a mental health professional. Attorneys, same thing. Doctors, same thing. Well, agencies, we didn't have to do that. We didn't have to attest to anything. We just needed to say, we're an agency and we can accept your money. And then we realized the scandals that were happening over and over, and still to this day that happen. And so we wanted to create a place where intended parents could also say, oh, look, there's this organization, an ethics organization that values the sanctity of this process. And, you know, if we work with an agency that works with this program, then at least these individuals are attesting to the fact that they are doing things the right way.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, I got introduced to seeds a little over 5 years ago. And I remember coming to the first conference and I was like, whoa, there's so many people doing what I'm doing and wanting to do it well.
Yeah.
Because since everybody can open up an agency, and you know, you can have one experience as an egg donor or a surrogate or an intended parent and decide you're going to open an agency and then want to walk people through this process. And while the heart is good, the education and experience is so tough. And so I really respect the fact that Seeds is focused on that as well, helping other people be educated in this process. And the conference is obviously a great way that we do this. So
yeah,
that part's really cool. So tell me just a little, so our listeners can tell me a little bit about you and maybe your history in the industry as well.
Yeah, so I started at an agency.
Okay.
And I was thinking, okay, I want to continue my education. I'm going to take a break from after college. And so I worked at a marketing company for a prominent egg donor and surrogacy agency. And I loved what they did. And I just, there were things that were different for me. I am of ethnic descent. I am Japanese. And, you know, something I noticed with the egg donation process was they would categorize all Asians together. And so when an intended parent, and this was 20 years plus,
right?
So it was a long time ago, but it wasn't, oh, we're looking for, you know, I'm looking for a donor. I want to find a Japanese egg donor because at least I want to find at least one thing that I can connect to another person and say they at least have this. Whether I'm left-handed or I'm a cello player, whatever it is, I want to have that connection. And so I found that there wasn't that specific, like Asians were categorized in one lump sum, and you know, not Koreans or Japanese and Chinese were all different cultures, you know. And so for me, I found that that was really important. So when I left that agency, I thought, you know what, I want to create something that reflects me. And you know, so I started, we started finding it's hard to find egg donors, like Japanese donors, East Indian donors, Jewish donors, and that's where we found our niche, was finding ethnic donors, finding donors that specifically weren't the most popular donors at the time, but those were the donors that I felt were important to find. So that's how we started our agency with the Genesis Group 20 years ago. And in regards to me, myself, I fell in love with the industry. You know, my backstory is my mom passed away when I was 2. And so my whole life, I didn't have a mother figure, but so many people stepped in to fill that role. And so, so family building was a part of my life from the time I was born. And so for me, I've always seen, you know, that I've always felt that blood doesn't make a family. It's being there, being present, showing up. And so, you know, when I find intended parents that are desperately trying to have a family, it emotionally charges me. Like, I want to, what can I do to help? I didn't know what I wanted to do in life from an early age. I just knew that I'd be in a position of wanting to help people. Like, I believe that we meet people for a reason. And whether you're teaching me something or I'm helping you, that human interaction is what life's about. And so when I found that intersection, I was like, what do I need to do in order to keep moving forward in this space? And I found that, you know, finding an agency and creating a program that I felt good about was something that I felt strongly. And I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And so that combined together, you know, created the Genesis Group.
That's beautiful. I love hearing that. I always say, like, I didn't think I was going to own an egg donation and surrogacy agency when I was a kid, but I too knew I wanted to help. But I also knew, like, the entrepreneurial spirit was there. And then, of course, as an egg donor and then as a surrogate,
it was like 1 + 1.
Oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I understand that. All right, well, we are here in San Diego at the Seeds Conference, and I get the privilege of talking with Dr. De Pinho.
It's a pleasure.
And we get to serve together on the board here at Seeds. So I would love you first just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about how you're in this industry, and then what made you get involved in Seeds.
Thank you so much. First, thank you for the invitation. It's a privilege to talk to you. I think there's a few number of people that I've come across that know as much as I do, not because, you know, you have all your past, but I think you're very well integrated.
Well, thank you.
But third party, the long story and the long version would be ours. The short version is I myself I had to go through this infertility story that I wish nobody would have to go through. And for a few years, it's always, the doctor that gets the diagnosis that it doesn't want to have, and
Yeah,
it was a
right.
uterine factor.
Okay.
And so we decided to go many routes. Things were not working for a few years down in Houston,
Yeah.
where I was.
Okay.
And
Fellow Texan.
yes. And then, at the last minute, things were about really not, and to take a very bad turn. Third party was already the only option. And things got right, and I got to have a daughter. I got to have a son, and now I have a third one, which is a 9, a 13, and a 17. And so my story goes that I needed third party to get the process of becoming a parent, me and my wife.
Yeah. Which of course gives you a wonderful perspective as you are talking with parents that are working to build their families in this way, or even surrogates or egg donors who have to go through the process of medication. So what brought you to Seeds? How did you find out about Seeds? Why did you, as a physician, want to be a part of Seeds?
Well, Seeds was a compliment. I already heard about Seeds for a number of years, and this was back when I was still in Houston, and I had just gotten to New York for when I was at Columbia University for my fellowship in REI, Reproductive Endocrinology and Infertility. And while in there, I was already scouting for where it would be the third party, environment for a fertility facility that I could have and that I could participate. One of them was City Fertility, which I actually ended up. And at that moment, I already knew a little bit about the concept with John Waltman, which is, and all the people that were trying to organize things. Lisa Chiya at that moment was just a connaissance at afar. And all of a sudden, I see this organization that has agencies. And part of what we do is a mechanistically cogwheel of many, many parts that get together and they rotate at different moments. The egg donor agency, the clinic that facilitates all the process in the very beginning, but the agency that also permits and permeates all that, gestational carrier from the screening, from the preparation, from the pregnancy until 12 weeks and beyond. And it fascinated me that there was no talk really or environment to talk. Even at the ASRM meetings that we have, we barely have an organization that really is dedicated for that. ACOG has also a part of it, but not very flourished, not until now. And this was the inception of more than 10 years ago. And then, of course, participating in those first meetings, I just wanted to sit on the back. And I'm not kidding you. It was just sitting on the back and seeing the discussions or the problems that the agencies would have. And what they needed to be guided for. And it all of a sudden, really kind of hit me like a small little idea, which is, shouldn't we follow all the same principles in different regions? And that got started a really good relationship, not only with the agencies, but that conversation that needs to occur between the clinics and the agencies too, and the professionals that do all the psychological evaluations, the mental health, the social evaluation that needs to be done, not only on a gestational carrier, but also on an egg donor, all the upgrades in science that need to be divulged between one part and the other. And the interesting part in the first few meetings, and I still remember, the first few meetings where, so what is this thing about PGS at the time?
Yeah.
Not even PGTA. It was brand new. Should we do it? And How are we going to do it? Is it day 3? Is it day 5? There was a lot of confusion. And then the second part was so natural, which is I need to belong, as many other colleagues of mine should belong to an organization where we can facilitate this information that is valuable for them.
Mm-hmm.
Clinics can communicate more and better with the agencies. We are all at the same level, but with different competencies. Means it does mean that the clinic supersedes anyone, but nobody supersedes. But everyone is working with the same objective, which
Right.
is in the end the intended parents to have the baby that has a better pregnancy because the gestational carrier was chosen well, but also because the egg donor was screened well and
Right.
had all the conditions. And not everybody can be a gestational carrier. Not everybody can be an egg donor.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, like, within our agency or here on the podcast, that it's so important to create a team. And that's what you're saying. Like, there's a team, there's a physician, there's an agency, there's mental health professionals, there's attorneys. And the beautiful thing about Seeds and the conference in itself is the ability for all these people to get together to make sure that we are serving everyone, all of our clients and patients well.
Yes.
Obviously, the rollout of standards, and then for agencies, and now as we start working on standards for other parts of the industry, that's key. So, what made you want to join the board?
2 things. It came clear to me, which is there needed to be a voice other than the agency part on the board of Seeds. And to do this, all throughout, before this is the 2000 and probably 16 to 17, the idea starts to incept, which is you start to converse with folks saying, can we have standards that would be embarking and contain what the ASRAM has already as standards and guidelines and recommendations, and also ACOG has, ASHRAE on our European side also has. And I mention ASHRAE because many of our intended parents, they're not only from the US, they're also international, and embarking all those rules and regulations can be a little bit daunting. And then we needed to find a way where the voice could be heard, but also I needed to have a little bit more experience because just, coming flying as a parachute and saying, oh, I know how to do this. So the first things first was to observe. Actually, I almost joined a couple of committees. It was the education committee at the time. And then, I talking with Adam, he said, I think it's a good idea because I think we are at the point of this organization where we should be open to embark other professionals and expand on the same values over here. We sediment and we actually put a more solidified standards for the agencies, but they're complemented now with others, and we're not creating a space at Seeds where it invades other organizations or even disrupts other organizations. On the opposite, we actually want to follow the guidelines for our colleagues for mental health, for example, but also to follow our guidelines for even family doctors that do a little bit of fertility and can counsel, and sometimes are those that follow the pregnancies for our gestational carriers. So involving all of that, it came to a point where maybe I should. And then, with a certain number of the board's members, I came up with the idea, proposed what would be the objectives, that then came to, maybe they would like to have a physician among them, invading their space.
And, no invasion. I was so excited when you joined the board because you do bring a different perspective from agency owners. Most of us were agency owners, and then Adam at that time was serving as the president. But it's like physicians play such a key role in all of this, obviously, but also we learn, like, as an agency, as mental health professionals, as attorneys, and everybody really does have to work together for this to be successful. And so having your the first time I heard you did it was on genetics, and I was like,
Yes.
oh my goodness, there is so much new information coming out. And so that's so helpful, because believe it or not, like as an agency, sometimes we're the first ones to explain things to patients. Well, tell me, what would be one piece of advice you would give intended parents, surrogates, or egg donors that are starting this process? What would be that one piece of advice that you would give them?
First things first is find the right forum. And finding the right forum is, you need to know that your vocation is going to be placed in the right appropriate way. I usually tell this all the time, which is, intended parents ask me, well, you know, how are egg donors? So any woman can be an egg donor? No. And the percentage that we get in the very end, I tell, you know, folks, that can be, you know, a month, an agency can get 50% out of all the, you know, egg donors that are being represented as a possibility, because maybe they don't have the right vocation. Maybe they have a fertility that is okay for them, but it might not be even, you know, good for the intended parents that they want to provide things for. And I know a lot of gestational carriers, for example, this is a common example, which is, you know, I want to be a gestational carrier, but I had 3 C-sections, and now, you know, I had a complication with the last 2 that was sufficiently contraindicating them to proceed with a new journey. And this is, find the right forum, which is, who is going to be the right person to answer the questions. And here it gets a little bit more complicated, because remember this, it's really difficult for an agency to say, well, you can come to me and I can inform you about everything, but is it sufficiently separated from the intent of having that egg donor? Is it sufficiently independent from the decision that you don't want to coerce the other person and put yourself in that environment? That's where I think Seeds can come up, which is, we furnish not only the agencies with the right tools for them to inform intended parents, not only to inform egg donors and gestational carriers, and from the inception, they should have at least a little bit of a uniformized kind of manner. ACOG does it, we have the bulletins, ASRM does it, and we should probably implement some sort of, you know, way very seamlessly, so that the intended parent goes and says, you know, how do I start? What are my next steps? Is it the agency that I start with? Should I be looking at egg donors? What do I need to do? So many little thousands of questions that can be very well dissipated. And let me also tell one thing. I want to involve the clinics in this, because here's the problem that I will tell. Jokingly, I can say, you know, yes, doctors like, you know, to have, you know, a little bit of sway in saying that they should be in the top of the food chain, and we're not. We are as important as the step that we provide, and every step will be important, because if you don't have a right OBGYN with the right MFM, means maternal fetal medicine, because that young lady is, you know, passing through a peril, and you anticipate that peril, and you put it with the right environment, then we don't become as important as we think we are. We are important as a team. And I usually say, you know, a team, pardon me for alluding for a little metaphor, but a police officer cannot catch a thief maybe by itself, but a department, they can. And so unified, we can do a lot of things positive towards the end. And yes, it takes a little bit longer than we would wish, and sometimes everybody won't agree with the same principles everywhere. But that's where I think Seeds can do a platform where we have standards. And standards means a baseline that everybody actually can follow and be good with it, independent of the state, independent of anything that they're doing. It is the standard that we should provide that care, either clinically, either to an egg donor agency, either to a gestational care agency, escrow account, all those elements that are needed. We need to have an organization that can provide that unified unison with one voice, Seeds.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that is what Seeds is bringing to the table. The standards, the education is huge. And so I know as an agency owner, if we can't serve somebody with an egg donor or surrogate, the first thing I say is go to the Seeds directory. Like, make sure that the agency that you go with is there so you know you are getting that standard. Coupled mental health attorneys, all of those things can be, and escrow agencies can be looked at too.
It's not to provoke, this is not to provoke an environment where folks feel restricted on their own environment to do what they usually, or used to do.
Right.
It's just to maintain a format that, irrespective of the playing field, the intended parent or the client, I don't like that word, but the care that you're going to provide to one of the elements that is going to be fundamentally important, you're providing it in the best way that you can. You maybe are providing, some knowledge about putting an egg donor in a registry because it sounds good. Are you obligated to do so? Probably not yet, but should you? Probably. There's a lot of little questions that we can answer intermediately, and also a forum where folks can also protect themselves and provide information even to protect themselves. Was this done in the correct way? We can actually help or assist folks in saying, well, there's many ways to get to the same place in the very end, and maybe we shouldn't use this one, and this one would be a more appropriate way. I really feel strongly about this. Ethics is the major part of a profession like being a doctor, and being a doctor and being a physician is no different than what you do. I'm sorry to say this, but you probably have a more important role sometimes than I do.
I don't know about that, but it's a team. It's a team effort.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, well, as we wrap up our time together, I would love to ask you we asked it that at the end of all of our podcasts, but what filled your cup today? Either figuratively or literally, what filled your cup today? Here in beautiful San Diego.
My cup today, the calmness of the serenity of the environment that we are. That filled my cup today. It's really hard to find. Pardon me for saying this, but I think I can involve you in that part, which is we live very busy lives.
We do.
And, having a restful moment, talking about important things, but the water as a serenity and the focus that sometimes, we have to maintain attentive to millions of little parts. Yes. And sometimes I, like I usually say, I wanted to get to that email. I didn't get to that email on that time. And it's such a busy life that we lead for others that ever so often we forgot that, there's little ponds.
Beautiful ducks
yes.
around here.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, this is so nice. Well, thank you so much for joining today.
I
am grateful for your contributions.
I'm more
here
than grateful.
At Seeds, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much.
All right. We are here at the Seeds Conference in fall of 2024, and I get the privilege of talking to Adam Winder. He is part of the board at Seeds. We are in San Diego, hence the beautiful background as opposed to a podcast studio. So, Adam, tell me a little bit about your role in the industry and also your involvement in Seeds.
Yeah, so I have the privilege of being one of the owners of SeedTrust Escrow. And our primary function is holding the funds for intended parent surrogates and donors and managing between all parties. So we started our escrow business about 9 years ago, going on 10, and have really taken a key role in kind of transforming what escrow really means in the industry, which we're really proud of. Really making it more transparent, more secure, and better for everybody involved.
Yeah. So your role in Seeds as an organization that started with agencies, you obviously bring a different perspective to it, being that you're an industry professional. So tell me, why did you choose to become involved in an organization like Seeds?
Yeah, coming from a different industry, I came from banking and finance. There was always just really strong trade organizations that brought everybody together, set policies, set standards, and had influence for the better for the industry. And when I looked at the space when I first entered, obviously there were great organizations for the doctors and for the attorneys, but Seeds was well positioned not only to be the organization for agencies, but also an organization that brings the whole industry together at one place. So for us, for me, I became very passionate about that and very passionate about the idea of setting standards and providing education that allows the industry as a whole to grow and grow for the better.
Yeah. And we're definitely seeing that through standards that were created last year, and you played an integral role in that. So what does it mean for you to be a part of the board at Seeds?
Yeah, so I started off at Seeds volunteering on committees and then became a committee chair. And then after committee chair, got the opportunity to become president of the organization as an officer for 2.5, 3 years. And then after got elected to the board. So I've kind of been at all phases of the volunteering for Seeds. But at the board, the key thing is our job as the board is really just to set the overall strategic direction and making sure the organization's on the right track to hit our objectives. So since I've been involved with Seeds, we took the board from technically 2 people, the 2 founding members, to expanding it to 5, and that's when Katy came in.
Yeah.
And that's when we really started to go faster, really making progress for the organization. And then from 5 to 7. So we have a large board that's diverse, that brings different opinions. So it's not directed by one person or one strong opinion. It's directed by the vote of a group of people that are ultimately voting towards the benefit of Seeds.
Yeah. And not only the benefit of Seeds, but the benefit of the industry as a whole. Surrogacy, egg donation is not federally regulated. And so Seeds itself is coming in to help create those standards and best practices. So the flip side of that, I would say, is a lot of intended parents, egg donors, surrogates don't even know about Seeds as a whole. Yeah. And so what would you say is most important for either of those 3 clients to know about the organization of Seeds and how it can best serve them?
Yeah, I think Seeds as an organization was founded with the principles of providing education and bringing the community together so we can all get better and better serve the clients, and also to set standards. And the organization has been on that journey for a long time, and we've officially set standards and have a detailed process that, if followed, these standards protect everybody involved, the intended parents, surrogates, the donors, and the industry as a whole. So as an intended parent or surrogate, thinking about who to work with, whether it's a professional or an agency, they should look to the Seeds logo to say, this is an organization that sets standards. They're there, they're learning, they're bettering their business, they're bettering their practice, and they care about the industry as a whole. So that's the goal of Seeds, and we're continuing to move into further ways of setting compliance and ensuring that membership is up to date with our standards, which we're really excited about.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. We have a lot of people who listen to this podcast that are brand new to the world of either surrogacy or egg donation. They're learning about Seeds, or they're learning why is escrow so important. Yeah. So what would be your best advice for someone that is just starting initially, specifically as an intended parent, and they're building that team of people around them to support them on this journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, first of all, the process is so beautiful and so meaningful. And we feel, as industry professionals, so happy to be part of helping people build their families and making it possible through through surrogacy and egg donation. Having said that, it's also complex, emotional, expensive, and it's a medical process. So there's no necessary guarantees per se that the process is going to go perfect. Yeah. But most of them go really well. But it's important that you surround yourself with the best professionals in every category, right? So having the privilege, talking with that tongue tied today, having the privilege of we've worked with over 413 agencies, for example, over the years. And there is a difference depending on which agency you select. There's a difference based on what attorney you select in your surrogate or donor select. And also the insurance providers and the doctors. Everything matters, right? So take the time not to be particular and vet and make sure you have the best partners in every category. Yeah. Like for our segment of the business is often an afterthought in escrow. Mm-hmm. It is. But if escrow is not managed well, in the absolute worst scenario, money could be stolen or taken or lost, like we've seen in the past, which is terrible, and why we exist to ensure that doesn't happen. But it can also just create process pain and put everybody at risk
Yeah.
and create unnecessary financial stress between the parties. The intended parents and surrogates or donors should be focused on the beautiful process of having the baby,
Yeah.
not the legal, financial. Leave that to the professionals to make that process easy and guided well.
Right.
And if you have the right team around you, you're greatly de-risking your stress and your risk.
Yeah, that team is key because, I know we say from an agency perspective, like we do this all day, every day. You do as well from a financial standpoint. I know we respect the fact that you have attorneys that are looking through contracts, and it's easy. You disperse money based on what the contract says, but you have to have the professionals on your team to make sure that that's being done well, and that does allow everybody to just enjoy their time and their journey in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the agencies are the real heroes in the process of bringing everybody together, guiding everybody. Really, it's really working to guide this very complex process. And it's a very hard role in the industry because it's so complex, and they have to make sure they're helping coordinate all the professionals and bringing in the right people and guiding the clients through all the entire process. So picking the agency is key, but also the partners are critical because the agencies have to count on them in a lot of areas, and the financial piece is one of them.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So anyone who listens to our podcast regularly, we always ask the question, what filled your cup today? So either literally or figuratively, what filled your cup today?
Admittedly, I probably drink too much coffee, right? So when I travel, I don't get the amount of coffee I usually get at home, which is embarrassing. But no, what fills my cup today is being here in San Diego at Seeds. I'm going to see all of our colleagues in the industry that are so passionate about helping people, seeing Seeds grow in terms of impact and that we're having. It truly makes me so happy to be part of such a beautiful industry, having such a big impact.
Yep, it's a privilege to be in this space and be with other people that are leading towards making this a great experience for every single family, surrogate, and egg donor who are embarking on this journey and have that common goal of doing it well, where everybody ends well.
Yeah, and what Seeds is doing in terms of setting standards and self-regulating and raising the bar in the industry across the board is so beautiful for everybody involved and all the families. So I'm just so happy to be part of that. It's amazing. Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you for coming, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. It is so nice getting to spend some time with you. And I would just love to hear more about you. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience, what you do in the world of third party, and your involvement in Seeds.
Awesome. Well, I'm super happy to do this with you. So I am currently the residing COO for Art Risk Financial and Insurance Solutions, and I have been doing this for 15 years, or been in the reproductive technology community for 15 years, and then started being involved with Seeds about, oh gosh, it's almost been 5 years now that I feel like I've had some kind of an active participation outside of just attending conferences. I started on the membership committee, and then I chaired the membership committee, and now I'm a current sitting officer. I act as the secretary on the officer team for Seeds.
Awesome. Well, okay, you have more of a unique perspective to Seeds and to the industry because you're in the insurance world, and insurance is so complicated and it's changing all the time. So tell me, what is the importance with insurance, with egg donation, surrogacy, and why it's important for intended parents to know about insurance, and kind of how Seeds has come alongside in this process to ensure that it's ethical and that it's meeting people's needs?
Yeah. So, kind of one of the big things that we look at during the whole process is we look at the contract that the attorneys do. And we say, okay, in the contract, there's certain things that the intended parent is responsible for paying for. And this can be with either the donor or the gestational carrier. And so what insurances that we sell, our insurances are going to protect both parties. So we're going to protect the intended parents financially. And then also we're just going to make sure, again, that the gestational carrier as well as the donor has proper coverage for themselves, That includes life insurance in case something happens, loss of reproductive organs. So we're really just making sure kind of across the whole journey that both parties are going to be protected on the insurance side. Seeds has been super wonderful because what they have done is said, there are certain insurances that are really important to have. Number one is a business, professional liability. That's one of the mandates of being a member is to have that as a business, which I think is great. And then outside of that is setting certain limits on the minimum of life insurance and making sure that it's in play and the time period of which
Right.
it should be in play. Again, looking at it from a protection standpoint of, hey, gestational carriers need to be protected for their families in case anything happens. And so SEEDS has been wonderful, not only about putting in some of that verbiage to help protect, but then also having in the conference realm, making sure that there's panels that we talk about insurance and the changes that are happening, and brown bags, which are our monthly educational series at SEEDS. Just making sure everyone's really up to date on what's going on. And if there are changes or shifts, let's say even from a legal perspective, that on the insurance front, we're keeping up with those changes so that there's no loopholes or cracks that we're missing in the journey.
Yeah, I mean, insurance is one more thing that SEEDS is coming alongside agencies, attorneys, which of course then ripples down to intended parents, surrogates, and egg donors.
Yeah,
Because if you're not attending these conferences and if you're not going to brown bags,
yeah,
I'm not sure there is not any other resource in the
there's
industry
not.
that is ensuring that families and surrogates and egg donors are protected. And that is another great reason why SEEDS membership is
Yeah,
so important.
it's a local place. I think there's something where as a business, we hold webinars and we do things like that, and a lot of other businesses hold webinars as well. But I found that Seeds is a wonderful collective space to get all of that information, and hear also from all the different stakeholders about what the impact is going to be. You're really coming from a group orientated perspective. And I really appreciate that about Seeds, about how collaborative and community oriented it is. So, again, when you join, you're not trying to find all the information, it's going to be there for you, again, via brown bags or the newsletter or those conferences. So, they really do a great job of centralizing all the information, which is insanely helpful as a business person and trying to be the support for all of the intended parents and gestational carriers.
Okay, so tell me what made you decide to be involved now? You said a little over 5 years ago in
Yeah.
SEEDS.
So I've always loved ethics. I used to take ethics courses in college just for fun because I
Mhm.
thought it was so interesting. How it was never really black and white, but it was an open conversation, and that it was constantly moving in coordination with the world around you. And I always thought that was really interesting in general. I started getting involved more in seeds again with my love of ethics, but also looking at it from a standpoint of these are all people that want to do good and want to do right
Mhm.
by the community that we're serving. And I think that just speaks to me in general of wanting to be a part of that. Um, I am a natural person who wants everyone to be included, so membership was kind of a natural segue for
Yeah.
me to be like, "Hey, come be a member. I
Yeah,
want you to be a
that's where
member."
we met each other, was on the membership
Uh-huh.
committee. It was
Yeah.
great interviewing people, finding
Yeah.
out about what they did
Yeah.
and why they
Yeah.
wanted to be a part,
Yeah.
hearing their story. It was
Yeah,
cool.
and it was, and I think that then kind of segued into um, being the chair, and I was co-chair for a while, and then ended up being chair. And I think that was that was fun because I felt like we were able to really open it up a little bit more. That's where we kind of said, okay, hey, if you're international and you are doing business in the United States, we didn't used to have that. We were
Yeah.
able to open it up in that capacity. And then we really started taking a look at who are we missing in our membership
Hmm.
and starting to really work on getting more stakeholders in there. This started out as an organization for agencies, and then we started getting attorneys and escrow and
Yeah.
insurance, which is wonderful. And then we realized, hey, we really need mental health in here. We really need medical. And so we were
Hmm.
able on the membership side to kind of hone in on that. So that was something that I really enjoyed doing, was trying to figure out how do we get this to be something that more people want to be involved in, and be a part of, because their voices are super important for us to have, again, kind of this global view of surrogacy. Um, and then outside of that, I just always like being more and more involved in anything that I
Yeah.
believe in and that I like. So that I
No,
was like, hey, I could also
right.
um, be an officer or do something, do something like that. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I was very thankful for being asked to be an officer, and have honestly, it's been one of my greater roles that I've had is being an officer for Seeds the last
Yeah.
year. We just passed the year mark for us officers. So,
Well, I can tell you as a member of the board, our officer team is absolutely amazing. And you all are setting the tone and are just working so hard to ensure that Seeds continues to move along, to be that supportive space
yeah.
and be that resource that agencies, mental health,
Yeah.
everybody needs in order to survive. Because ultimately, we do all have the same goal, and that is to serve
We
these
do.
intended parents, these surrogates, and these egg donors really well
Yeah.
through this process, and
Yeah.
it be ethical.
Yeah.
And not enough people are talking about that. We all know that.
Yep.
Not enough
Yep.
people are talking about how well it's being done by so many, but Seeds is a huge part of that.
It is. And I really love, I mean, I love that you said we have a great team. We have a great team. We have a great
Yeah.
officers team, and
Yep.
very much are all in sync and see the vision of Seeds moving forward, which has been really nice, and making sure that kind of in our time with it, that we're able to really make a lasting impact. Every time we
Right.
meet, we're not looking at the here and now. We're looking, okay, what is the impact 5 years from now with the decisions that are being made? And I mean, I can't say enough about that.
Yeah. That
I
part's
feel
awesome.
so thankful to be a part of it.
Right. Yes. No, I love that. That's so good. Okay, my last question for you.
Yeah.
And all you know from living in the insurance world as well as Seeds, if you had to give one piece of advice to anyone building their family this way, or surrogate or an egg donor, what would that be?
Mm. Um, oh gosh, I would say don't settle. Um, don't settle.
Yeah.
If something
Yeah.
doesn't feel right, talk it through.
That's so good.
Lean on your attorney, lean on your agency, have the hard conversations. I think that's a big thing. Yeah, I mean, this is a journey, and you're in it for, around 2 years. And I think the biggest thing
Right.
is to make sure that this feels good. And so yeah, so that's my thing, is don't settle. If it doesn't feel right, then press forward and ask the hard questions and have the hard conversations.
That is so good. Don't settle. Ask the questions, even if they're hard,
Yeah.
in order to understand and
Yes.
feel comfortable with those next steps. Because
Yeah.
you're right. If you kind of leave that gray at the very beginning, and
Yeah.
then something, it's kind of that the mountain is what it ends up
Yeah.
building. It's a small,
Yes.
tiny hole of disconnect or lack of communication, and then it just builds. It's much
Yeah.
easier to ask the question and not
Because
feel the gray
every
moving forward.
everyone tries to educate themselves, and I think that was like my first thing in my head when you asked the question, was like, oh, well, educate yourselves. But it's way beyond that. There's so much
Hmm.
education out there that sometimes it becomes super overwhelming, because you're being
Right.
fed so much info, and you're doing your research, and you're reading, blogs and posts, and you're talking to your attorneys and your friends that have done it, or you're in a group or a support group. And I think that at the end of the day, it is really goes back to what sits well on your heart and move forward in the
Yeah.
journey. And that's but that to me is always going back to like asking the hard questions, having the hard conversation, and um, yeah, feeling good in it.
That is so good. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Sarah, and sharing your expertise not only in insurance and what families can look there, but how Seeds has come alongside and how beneficial it is for people looking at this niche.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
thank
Bye.
you. Bye, Katie.
Lisa, thank you for joining us here. I am just so excited to talk to you because of your heart around education and what that means for Seeds. So, Before we get started, tell me a little bit about your history, you yourself, your history in the industry, but also your history with seeds.
Okay, so I myself was a surrogate twice. I carried twins
Awesome.
first, and then
Hmm.
full term, no complications, all that kind of stuff. And then I carried a single the second time. Then I worked for an agency, and then when that agency was sold, then I started my own agency. And so I've been doing this for, gosh, I don't know, 17 years now, something like that.
Awesome. So
So,
you
you
have
know, it's
you have a
it's
lot
been
of
a while.
experience. You've seen a lot. Things have
Yes,
changed a lot in the
a
industry.
lot.
So tell me where that kind of led you with seeds and your heart in serving the organization here.
Yeah, so when Seeds first started, I'll be honest, we were kind of like, okay, let's wait and see how this goes,
Yeah.
like let's see what this is really about. We went to a few conferences, kind of checked it out. And then I actually went to some of the founders and I'm like, okay, like you asked for help, I'm here to help. And then
Of
they
course.
didn't really ask for help. I mean, they like never got back to me. And then, the next conference they were asking, like, hey, if you want to volunteer, it's a volunteer organization. And I was like, volunteer? I'm like, just let me know what you need. Eventually, like they took me up on my offer. And first I was a part of the education committee.
Yeah.
And then I later took over as chair. And what the education committee does is, um, well, at this point now, it has grown, but at this point now, we do monthly webinars, and then we do two conferences a year. Back then, actually, it wasn't quite like we actually moved to those webinars during COVID. So that was like
Yeah.
a developing thing because we couldn't have our conferences. So how do we keep people educated?
Right.
Especially, during COVID, things were obviously changing. Like
Mm-hmm.
how are you
It was
supposed
a
to do it?
huge
Like
challenge.
before COVID, the standard was kind of like in-person psych evals. Well, now that nobody can meet in person, now what do? There's a lot of things to adjust. It's a field that changes quite often. Especially because every single state has their own statutes or rules or different
Right.
things, not all about who can, use a surrogate, like have a surrogate. Um, what the requirements are, like if they have to be biologically related or if they have to
Right.
be a married couple or but then also you have the legislation in between. I mean, like for each individual state that also can be changing. So there's just a lot of things. And the reason why like what I used my surrogacy money for was to go to law school. And one of the
Mm,
things that really I found fascinating during my first journey was how every single state had different laws about surrogacy, and they
yeah.
came from different places. So, like
Mm-hmm.
like Utah, for example, is based on their family law. Like that's the direction that they went. Like let's make it like that makes sense to us. So we're going to kind of make it similar to our adoption laws. In California, it's based on contract law. You two have a contract, you're legal, you follow the contract rule, done. Um, it's not so much about are you qualified to be a parent like it can be if it's
Yeah.
based on family law. So anyway, I just found all of that fascinating. And so that kind of got me into the field, and why I really love education is because it- not only are things always changing, so there's always new things to learn, but it takes a while. Like some people even tell you, like if the agency is less than 5 years old, like be
Mm-hmm.
careful. And
Yeah.
and the reason is because think about a surrogacy journey, for example. Like one journey takes like a year at least,
Or
right?
two
That's if
these
everything
days.
goes well. That's what I'm saying. As long as if everything goes perfectly, like
Yeah.
a year. So if an agency has only been in business for 5 years, they haven't run into some of those like weird, wonky things that may or may not
Mm-hmm.
happen. And that's not even getting into really weird things like COVID, or like we
Yeah.
once had an egg donor that was in Boston for screening when the Boston bombing happened. And,
Wow.
like there are things that can
Yeah.
happen. It's not a, as much as people would like it to be like follow the directions and, just check these boxes, that's not reality. Like it's
Yeah.
just not real life. IVF is not an exact science, surrogacy is not exact science, and you have a whole variety of people that are all working together, and they all have different personalities, and they all have different life
Hmm.
experience and different viewpoints and what they're wanting and what their expectations are. And that's why agencies are important,
Yeah.
because it's the agency is the only partner that anyone has all the way through their journey
Right.
with all the aspects. That's it. And
Right.
so choosing somebody to help you maneuver that path that has that experience is really invaluable. And yes, if everything goes well, you might be like, oh, I didn't need them.
Of course. And we hope that,
But,
right? I
and we
tell my
really
team that all the
actually,
time. Like,
I
okay, we
know.
want people to not have problems, but that's what we're here for, is when they have problems.
Exactly. Exactly. And to help them avoid problems. Because if we
Hmm.
actually do our job really well and we've been proactive and we've
Yeah.
avoided the problems, they may not recognize or realize what it is that we have
Right.
done,
True.
and just be like, they barely did anything. But they're not the ones that are making the phone calls to be like, okay,
Hmm.
this should have taken 3 days. When you know, is that done yet? When are we going to get that? All of those things that people
We
don't
know.
see that we do to like push the things along, push everything along. So anyway, with part of one of the requirements of seeds of being a member is that you get continuing education
Right.
units. And so the way that you do that is by attending webinars, conferences, because you could have been doing this for 30 years, but the industry is entirely different from 30 years ago to now. It just is. And things are changing, and the liability is changing, and insurance changes. I mean, every year,
Right.
every single open enrollment, every time they're going to have a new open enrollment period, insurance can change what's covered, what's not covered, and how things work. Like, but there's all kinds of different things that are like that can change along the way. Um, this statute changes, this federal thing changes, this state thing changes. And so part of what SEEDS does is educate on not only best practices, because we do have standards and how to follow those, but
Right.
also here are things that are happening in our field that you need to be aware of, and here's the best way to maneuver them. Because otherwise you can feel like you're doing it, I mean, as an agency, not only just an intended parent or a surrogate or an egg donor, but you can feel like you're doing it alone and you're trying to figure it out
Hmm.
alone. Whereas we have resources as a group. So for
Right.
example, when statutes changed, or when Roe v. Wade was overturned, we gather all of our attorneys together to like battle it out. Because if anyone's ever talked to two attorneys, you know that no attorney has like the same opinion
Right.
ever or wants to go about things the same way. So bringing them all together to collaboratively work on, here's the best way forward, here's what we can do to make this still work, or here's a way, or together as a group, here's how we can handle it. Also, when things go wrong, it's another
Yeah.
time that we all need to kind of band together, and we will do, open forums and town halls and things like that to kind of stay updated and kind of help figure out the best way to help intended parents or surrogates or egg donors, whoever's impacted by whatever it is that happens. And also, because of those things, it's also usually professionals in this field that when something goes wrong are the ones to like offer help and offer
Right.
services and things like that. So it's a community. And so when you have a SEEDS member as your professional, whether it be an attorney, a mental health professional, an agency, you're actually getting all of those resources, because they can come and pull from that expertise of everyone and go to those, they have those connections. So that's something that I love about SEEDS, and especially about the education committee, because it's so important to keep everyone in touch with all of those, you know, tiny changes. Well, sometimes they're big changes, and other times they're tiny changes. And
Right.
a lot of what's put out in the media is usually propaganda, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really giving one perspective of
Right.
whatever, and whatever is worst case scenario, that's what's going to sell.
Right.
So
Well, that's news in
what
general, right? Like
right,
the two
exactly.
extremes. But yes, most of those stories are not reflective of ethically moving through this process of helping people. It is
Right.
not stories of ethical agencies that are treating people well, are staying up to date on current information. And I
Are
think you brought up,
following this
yeah,
ethical standards or
yeah. I mean,
even the
you
best
brought up a
practices.
yeah, and you brought up a great point in the fact that, yes, everybody, it seems, decides, oh, I could be an agency. And you're right. If you haven't had, I mean, in 5 years, someone might have only facilitated 20, 25 journeys. I mean, if they're just now starting, they might get 3, 4, 5 a year until they've grown. And that is just not enough experience to truly be able to help and serve people and see, as we say at our agency, the train a coming, to be able to see
Yeah.
that in order to be proactive. And so when a new agency chooses to join Seeds and chooses to follow its ethical standards to get started with, but then they have the access of other people and owners like ourselves who have been in this for almost 20 years to say, like, oh, here's how you could um, mitigate that, or here's the things that you can think about, or here's what might come down the pipeline, and here's some of the resources that are going to help you and that family and that surrogate or egg donor navigate these next steps. And it's huge.
Right. Yeah, because there are some things, for example, um, terminating a pregnancy with
Hmm.
surrogacy, that is very, very rare. And when I say
Right.
very, very rare, just to give some people an idea, like when Roe v. Wade was overturned, we got the entire community together, and there was only a handful of agencies that had ever even had that happen even once.
Right.
And it was always because of some huge medical issue where it was not like the baby was not compatible with life, just wasn't.
Right.
And then the parents were put in this, in the surrogate were put in this terrible situation trying to figure out, what do you do? And I know for our agency, it was at the 20-week ultrasound, they found that the baby was missing its esophagus, its urinary tract. Its
Mm.
kidneys were tumors. Like, it was things that just couldn't be fixed.
Yeah.
And the amniotic fluid levels were dropping. They kept doing new ultrasounds like every other day, right, to check and see how the baby
Oh,
was
that's so
doing.
tough.
And trying to find, they were getting like a second opinion and a third opinion, like trying to find somebody that had an answer, like that could help the baby at some point. And finally they asked at one point, they said, well, do you feel like the baby's suffering? And the doctor told them, well, basically, it's suffocating and starving to death at the same time. And we're just not sure which one's going to kill it first. Like, it's either going to have a heart attack
Mm.
or it's just going to suffocate or whatever. But, one of these is going to kill the baby
Mm.
before the age of viability. And even if it got to the age of viability, we don't have the medical, like, scientific knowledge to be able to, like,
Right.
put in an esophagus, like, or recreate an entire urinary tract. And do you know what I mean? Like, if it was just one thing, there might be some
Yeah.
hope, but they're like, at this point, we don't know. And, there's not a whole lot that can be done. And so knowing how to maneuver very
Yeah.
hard situations like that, for the surrogate, for the intended parents, even for your team, who's handling this heart-wrenching case that everyone's invested in, everybody wanted this baby, and that is just not
Yeah.
going to happen. And then just support them to try and figure, connecting them with mental health, and then so they can figure out what it is the best decision. Like, do you just wait until the baby dies? Do you terminate? What's the best plan? Those are things that having other professionals that
Hmm.
have been through that before and saying, here's what we did and here's how that worked out, can help you make those decisions, or even connecting, intended parents that have gone through similar experiences and be able to
Yeah.
talk to each other or have loss. That's part of what the community of seeds, brings. And as the education committee, we do have, panels and webinars and things about here's how to handle tough situations. We do usually kind of isolate it out, like
Hmm.
here's how to handle it for your team, and here's how to, here's the resources for parents, and here's the resources for surrogates. And so that hopefully if something like that happens, you've already heard, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then we have an online learning portal as well. So let's say that they maybe saw the webinar that we did and participated, but now they can go back and rewatch it now that it actually applies to them, and
Right.
then we have
Looking at it
the
with a
less
different lens.
exactly, like,
Then,
okay, let me rewatch this and see if, now that it's fresh and I'm applying it to an actual situation that we have. But then we also have more boring things like here's here's all the information that should be on a match sheet that makes
right.
the process so much smoother for, the attorneys and the clinic and, and everybody else. So we get to have those dialogues, and, it's always learning. It's not a stagnant field.
No.
And so that's why the education, component of seeds is really, really important. And I don't want to say anything bad about any other committee, but I'll say that we're probably one of the most important committees, I think, in my
I would
opinion.
say
And I could
so.
be
I mean,
biased.
yes, you could be, but also I see that. I mean, the best way for us as professionals to serve the families and egg donors and surrogates that we do serve is by being able to bring the knowledge to the table as well as experience. And when we lack that, being able to make sure that we have a way to understand that. I mean, I consider your story, and we as an agency, the only experience we have in almost 18 years of termination is two reductions from triplets to twins. And when I'm talking to surrogates or intended parents, I give examples. But I literally, as you were telling that story, I'm like, okay, maybe I will tell a surrogate that, like, hey, what if the baby didn't have an esophagus and, didn't have kidneys and their urinary tract was gone? Like, how do you feel about termination now? I mean, just hearing your experience helps to better equip me to do my job. And that's, of course, what the education team as a whole
Right.
does. So,
Yeah.
okay,
And what was
one,
interesting, okay, go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, and just an interesting piece about that particular match is they were both a no-term match. They,
Wow.
intended
Yeah.
parents and the surrogate were like, we're not terminating for any reason. They were on the same page. But because of that situation, they both talked, and the parents said, you know what? We know that we said no termination under, any circumstance,
Hmm.
and we're willing to live up to that if that's what the surrogate wants. But if the surrogate wants to terminate, because, basically she was like, this baby could die at like any minute, and how am I going to know if I'm carrying around a dead baby inside of me? Like, it was it was a weird situation to be
Yeah.
in. And so they said, if she feels like it would be better in this case to terminate, we will support that. Like, we will support her whatever the decision is. um so you just never know. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you can full on
Hmm.
believe that this, but there's a propaganda element to abortion where people think that every pregnancy equals a healthy baby, and it doesn't always.
Mm-mm.
So, there are reasons that you might want to change, at least be open to change the wording to if it's incompatible with life or something. And if not, that's fine. Like, we allow our surrogates to make whatever decision it is that works for them.
Right.
And it's just a matching point. So the parents
Right.
have the same viewpoint, and as long as
Yep.
they're all on the
That's how we
same
handle it too.
page. Yeah.
Then it
So
works.
go
Yep.
ahead. What was your question?
Well, what advice, this is my last question. What advice would you give a family building their family in this way, an egg donor or a surrogate, when getting started? What advice would you give them?
I would say it's not an exact science. You need to be
That's good.
patient and keep your eye on the end goal. Like it might not go as quickly as you want. There might be hiccups, but just stay dedicated because a lot of times people think that it's just supposed to be, you know, I do medical clearance and then I do contracts and then I go to transfer and then I'm pregnant and it's going to go like this. And sometimes it does. And those are great. But there are other times where there can be, I'll say, lining issues or,
Right,
hiccups along the way, a first failed transfer. And it doesn't mean that there's actually anything wrong. Like
right,
don't overanalyze and think that there's something wrong because it didn't go perfectly.
right. Sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of the other. We say around
Right.
here, we call it a journey for a reason. That is
Yep.
great advice, Lisa.
Exactly. Just stay focused on the goal.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share wisdom from all the experience that you have, and also just educate us more on seeds and the purposes of education and the benefits that it brings, not only its members, but also how that trickles down into the families and surrogates and egg donors. I appreciate you.
Anytime. I'm always happy to help.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Me, You, and Who. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed our discussion today. As we wrap, we would like to remind you of some of the ways that you can stay connected with us and be part of the Me, You, and Who podcast community. Firstly, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode and can stay up to date with our latest content. But that's not all. We also have an exciting YouTube channel where we share some bonus content, behind the scenes glimpses, and video versions of our episodes. Head over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button there as well. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the new episodes go live. And for more exclusive updates, engaging discussions, and a chance to connect with fellow listeners. Be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Create a Happy Family. If you're interested in finding out more about creating a happy family, please visit us at www.createahappyfamily.com. Thank you again for being part of the Me, You, and Who community. Your support means the world to us. I can't wait for you to join us next time as we continue to share stories and journeys of creating happy families.